Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Charging Ahead with EVs, a Drive Electric Wisconsin webinar, proudly presented by Dairyland Power Cooperative, Renew Wisconsin, and Wisconsin Clean Cities. I'm Kelly Verbeck, Program Specialist of Wisconsin Clean Cities, and I will serve as moderator for today's webinar. We are looking forward to a great event and are so happy to have you here with us today. Today, you will hear from a great lineup of industry experts on the latest in EV trends, programs, and grant opportunities from across the state. We'd like to first of all thank our speakers for joining us today. We will also be hosting a live Q&A session following today's presentations during the panel discussion, so please make sure to type your questions into either the chat or questions box, and we will make sure to get to as many as we can. Today's presentations and a recording of the webinar will be available on the Wisconsin Clean Cities website. Don't forget to check out our website for all of our upcoming events. I would like to start off today's presentations by turning things over to Jeremy Orr, Emerging Technologies Program Manager of Renew Wisconsin, who will provide us with an EV 101, including updates to the EV market and station locator. Whenever you're ready, Jeremy, take it away.
Sure, thank you. So good morning, everybody. As Kelly mentioned, I'm Jeremy Orr, Emerging Technology Program Manager at Renew Wisconsin. Happy to talk this morning about the EV market and Renew's EV adoption efforts. We don't have a whole lot of time here, just a few minutes, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Next slide, please, Kelly. So the EV market, where are we going? This is just a snapshot globally to kind of provide some context of global EV sales. From 2015 and then projections up through 2040. You'll see kind of a similar trajectory in the US, although at a lesser scale. I'm not going to get into the data too much. This is more for your awareness. I want to talk more about what's driving the projections. You will see a little dip there, though, 2020. That's COVID. We're expected to recover from that in 2021. But as far as what's driving these projections globally, in the US and even here in Wisconsin, I'd like to say we're at a tipping point. Adoption is expected to increase. We've got GM and other OEMs all in with EVs. We're seeing increased consumer demand. We're seeing increased battery ranges while battery prices are dropping. The current administration has laid out some pretty progressive EV plans, including the 500,000 charging stations nationwide, other sorts of incentives and whatnot. We're starting to see station funding, and certain grants that we never used to see them previously. And just looking at the year 2024, that's typically the number we like to use, the year we like to use when we talk about EVs being on cost parity with your traditional ICE vehicle. We're kind of starting to see that now in some regards. If you go online and just do a general search of EVs, some of the models out there now are kind of already on cost parity with your traditional vehicle. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of Wisconsin. Currently, EVs have just under 1% of the market share in the state of Wisconsin. We can kind of expect that to grow. Looking at the moderate side of things, EV penetration in the state, we're thinking 5%, 10%, and then 25% all the way up to 2050. Some of the data does show, though, that on the higher end, we can expect upwards of 50% EV penetration in Wisconsin by 2050, which is, that's significant. However, we are still seeing a lot of the main barriers to EV adoption. I'm talking like funding and incentives for both vehicles and stations, range anxiety. Although most charging is done at home, range anxiety is still an issue out in town. Folks just don't know where to locate stations, how to locate stations. And then again, access to charging stations, not just along corridors, but other public charging locations elsewhere. And then just general EV knowledge and charging knowledge, how to charge, where to charge. Just some of the basics of EVs, some of the education outreach that we're providing will kind of help overcome some of those barriers. Next slide, please. So speaking of stations, this is a snapshot from the Alternative Fuels Data Center, roughly Wisconsin and some parts of the Midwest. It's a great resource. Like I said, one of the main barriers to EV adoption is folks just not knowing where to look for stations. Here's one source. The station locator of the AFDC is a great resource. You can map a route if you wanted to go from, let's say, Madison to Minneapolis or wherever it may be. You can map a route. You can select different filters. It will display the various EV stations along that route. And right now we have roughly 350 plus public charging stations in Wisconsin. That does include level 2, DC fast, and Tesla. And that comes out to be roughly 750 outlets. So, I mean, still under 1,000 outlets total, but there are some efforts underway to increase EV station rollout throughout the state and, around the Midwest, generally speaking. Next slide, please. So, perfect segue into some of our work here at Renew. What are we doing to increase EV adoption? I think one of the first things, I'd like to highlight, given the time here, is the EVs for Good program. This is a grant funding program we offer currently to mission-based nonprofits. We offer up to, we can provide up to 20% of the total cost of a new or used electric vehicle or electric bike, not to exceed $5,000, but we also offer that for electric vehicle buses and vans, with the cap there being $10,000 max. We also offer up to $500 for a level 2 station or higher. We're currently accepting applications for the program. If anyone's interested in discussing further or, want more information, please feel free to contact me afterwards. But just generally speaking, we advocate on behalf of the EV industry. We talk to a lot of EV industry partners directly, kind of hear, a lot of the on-the-ground issues and barriers and opportunities that are presented in the state and how that can help drive effective policy. Whether we're talking about, using VW settlement funds for stations, exploring EV-ready codes, exploring different charging structures and whatnot, just always keeping our ears to the ground, talking to partners and learning what are the barriers and opportunities that can help drive effective policy and business models. And of course, going along with that is just addressing a lot of the access issues, whether that's, looking at direct sales, how's that, or lack thereof, how's that an issue with EV adoption? Or addressing access issues in a lot of the, traditionally underrepresented areas throughout the state, both rural and urban, maybe some tourist destinations. How can we help drive EV adoption in those areas as well? And then what I like to think of as part of the nuts and bolts of increasing EV adoption is just a general outreach and education to the community. There's still a lot of work to be done. We've done a lot of great work over the years, but there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of addressing, range anxiety, increasing knowledge of EVs, showing people how to locate stations, and not only that, how to charge. So aside from just, providing educational outlets like webinars and blogging and whatnot, in-person events like electric vehicle ride and drives, charging events, things of that nature are very instrumental in helping increase knowledge and just getting folks in front of vehicles. It's one thing to read about electric vehicles online and quite another to actually sit behind the wheel of one and take it for a test drive. I can't count the number of ride and drives I've hosted where somebody from the public would maybe be on the fence about electric vehicles, maybe read about it online, heard from others, but were kind of iffy about them. And then just that one test drive and their changed perception towards electric vehicles at that point, actually considering purchasing an electric vehicle or doing more research, whatever it may be, just that complete attitude change just from that one test drive. So I can't stress it enough. We do have a ride and drive coming up in September 29th with Clean Cities here in Madison. So looking forward to that. And that wraps it up, Kelly. If you want to go to the last slide, my contact information there. Feel free to ask any questions at the end or feel free to contact me afterwards. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy, for providing those updates for us. I would now like to turn things over to Lorrie Lisek, Executive Director of Wisconsin Clean Cities, who will provide a quick overview of Wisconsin Clean Cities and then some of the key grants and projects that we're working on relative to EVs. So whenever you're ready, Lorrie.
Okay, well, thank you, Kelly. As you know, Wisconsin Clean Cities is a nonprofit organization that serves the entire state of Wisconsin. We were established in 1994 and are part of the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities program, working with more than 75 Clean Cities coalitions across the country. We help to support our nation's energy and economic security by building partnerships to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels, energy-efficient mobility systems, and other fuel-saving technologies and practices. Wisconsin Clean Cities does this in a number of ways, including the advancement of alternative fuels, alternative fuel vehicles, sustainable vehicle technology such as electric vehicles, and their charging infrastructure. And these efforts reduce our nation's dependence on imported oil, improve air quality, support local jobs, economic development, and promote improved quality of life. Wisconsin Clean Cities' mission is done through education and outreach, training, project management, grant and funding acquisition, and the development of stakeholder partnerships. We're pleased to announce that we're currently a participant in more than 10 separate grant-funded projects, many of which address electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging. Wisconsin Clean Cities is proud to lead the Drive Electric project. The project is part of the Drive Electric USA, a partnership of the U.S. Department of Energy Clean Cities Coalitions working to significantly advance electric vehicle adoption in their states. The activities, outputs, and outcomes in the project are built on 7 priority areas of focused work, including creating strength-branded the statewide Drive Electric programs in each state and building capacity in those programs. Additionally, we'll look to educate consumers on developing multiple local EV chapters in all the states. We're going to engage and help to educate the utilities and the regulators about what is happening across the country. We'll help to advance infrastructure in all states via statewide corridors, regional and community EVSE planning, and including a focus on limited income communities. We'll continue to educate state and local government officials about EV policy best practices. We'll engage with dealerships and OEMs to develop state-based preferred EV dealer programs, including light duty and medium duty and heavy duty OEMs, and significantly increase EV adoption across many types of fleets and sizes of vehicles. Additionally, we're also part of a VCI multi-unit development grant, and we are pleased to partner with the Center for Sustainable Energy, along with 12 other Clean Cities coalitions and a host of other project partners on the vehicle charging innovations for multi-unit dwellings. This is a 3-year project with funding from the U.S. Department of Energy's Vehicle Technology Office. Wisconsin Clean Cities is working to engage stakeholders to document barriers to multi-unit dwelling and residential curbside charging stations. We're going to demonstrate innovative technologies and address barriers and compile project findings in an easy-to-use toolkit and disseminate that toolkit across national, regional, state, and local channels. We're currently collecting baseline multi-unit dwelling and residential curbside charging utilization data and developing innovative technology demonstration plans. Any organizations that's interested in historical charging station utilization data and or participating in a demonstration plan is encouraged to contact us. We'd love to have you get involved with this project. We are also been a partner of the Michigan to Montana I-94 Clean Fuel Corridor project. This aims to fill gaps in alternative fueling and electric vehicle charging along I-94 from Port Huron, Michigan to Billings, Montana. We are working to learn how we can help to fill those gaps and help to additionally add vehicles to help support that infrastructure. So we're really excited about this project. We soon will have our I-94 EV charging corridor completed across Wisconsin, probably in the next few months, and we'll hear more about that from some of our presenters. So if you're interested in learning more about Wisconsin Clean Cities, you can help to maximize these benefits of our other grant programs by getting involved with us. Please don't hesitate to contact our office. We look forward to charging ahead with EVs in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Lori, for that. Now I would like to go ahead and turn things over to the Director of the Wisconsin Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, Maria Redmond. Welcome, Maria.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? I can't see you, but I know you're out there, and I'm super excited to be here today and to be a part of this event. You can go to the next slide. I serve as the director of the Wisconsin Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy. The office was created in 2019 via Executive Order 38 with the goal of helping the state get to 100% carbon-free electricity consumed by 2050, and also a number of other items, including fostering innovation in technology as it relates to clean energy and sustainability, developing a comprehensive clean energy plan, and workforce development, lead by example. There's a lot of work involved with what I've been asked to do and what I've been asked to help the state to do. I work very closely with all of the agencies. I work across multiple agencies, and as it relates to electric vehicles and infrastructure, we actually have had an informal team meeting over the last 2 years that consists of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation and Public Service Commission of Wisconsin and Department of Administration, and we've just been checking in and information sharing and making sure that we're collaborating across the agencies to ensure that we have common goals and we're helping each other out. And we know that when folks are starting to move forward with projects, we want to be supportive of all of those. So we want to support that. But what's exciting too is that we've also now looped in Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation too. And so I have a feeling that this group of agencies will grow to include, Department of Safety and Professional Services from the building code side. It could potentially include other agencies as well, but we're super excited to have that connection. And that's really what I've been asked to do, is try to figure out how do we get as many stakeholders, how do we get as much collaboration across agencies and across stakeholder groups that are working in this space, and making sure that we're all working together to see some really large growth of deployment of and adoption of electric vehicles here in Wisconsin. The next slide. So I was asked to come talk a bit about what we're doing statewide, and many of you might be aware of the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change. The Governor's Task Force on Climate Change was created to advise the governor on developing a strategy to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change for the benefits of all Wisconsin communities. And we're really proud of the makeup of that task force and the diversity of the voices on the task force. And we were able to publish the final report and come up with 55 climate solutions that help mitigate and adapt to climate change. When you look at that report, there are some electric vehicle recommendations in there. One of them is to support hybrid electric vehicles and infrastructure. And what that is really focused on is developing a plan of how are we going to do that here in the state. And that includes input from stakeholders, including charging providers, EV manufacturers, sellers, underserved communities, the PSC, other agencies. Also focuses on ensuring cost-effective charging infrastructure and incentives, and also places a special focus on underserved areas, such as rural or lower income urban areas. And as part of that as well, there's a couple other recommendations, including the increased energy use reduction goals. Within that recommendation, it's number 7, there's energy efficient electrification, and looking to electric vehicles and other traditionally gas and diesel fueled equipment, and looking at the ways that they can be more efficient. And then we had tier 2. There were 9 policy options that drew support and concern, but what happened was the clean fuels policy was introduced late in the game, and so the task force didn't have enough information. So we recognize the importance of clean fuels policy and want to explore it. And so we included it as a tier 2 recommendation, number 54, to promote the use of clean transportation fuels as a way to get to electrification, because we know it's going to take time to do that. So looking at our opportunities for emission reduction now as we move towards electrification. Next slide. Also, a lot of the recommendations from the task force inform the governor for his budget. And so there are 38 climate and clean energy items under the governor's executive budget that are under consideration right now, which cover a number of topic areas, including environmental justice and building resilience, clean energy and clean economy, innovative conservation and land stewardship, and cleaner and safer streets. And under the cleaner and safer streets, that's where you're going to see the electrification type initiatives and budget items, where there's the 10 million of VW settlement funds to be dedicated to EV charging, station grant program, and then the excess of that 10 million would be to replace state vehicles with clean energy vehicles, 5 million in transportation bonding to build electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and also coordination for transit job access, and another $1 million each year for transportation alternatives program. So next slide. So in addition to taking those like understanding what the governor's task force on climate change was interested as it relates to electric vehicles and energy, and also looking at the governor's budget, we're in the process of developing a clean energy plan for the state, and looking across multiple sectors, building in environmental justice in all of our recommendations, and economic recovery as a part of it as well. And so one thing, we're developing a set of key recommendations that can really help us reach our 100% carbon-free electricity by 2050, but also looking across multiple sectors to see how can we do this, how can we do a deep decarbonization, multi-sector deep decarbonization, and what are the levers we have to pull, and what are the policies that we have to create to realize quickly that we can reduce emissions, and what do we need to do as a state via policy or via our programs, existing programs or new programs, to help reduce emissions here in Wisconsin. And so we're trying to map that out and create an actionable tool that defines the who, how, and what. So an example for electric vehicles is taking that electric vehicle recommendation in the governor's task force list of recommendations and putting it into the clean energy plan and putting some definition around, okay, we all recognize that we want to see further adoption and we want to see more infrastructure, but who and how and what needs to be done and what policy pieces need to be put in place. Like, what are things that we need to talk about, like direct sales or the EV fee that we had. Like, I drive a hybrid vehicle and there's an EV, there's an extra charge. Well, we need to understand the trade-offs and benefits of, getting rid of that, or, why are we preventing, direct, like, what is the law that around direct sales, and like doing some analysis around some of these issues that keep popping up and figuring out, okay, what is the plan for Wisconsin and how can we move things forward? And many of you might have been following what's happening on the federal administration. That's super important. We've been building that into the plan. And yesterday, President Biden was at the Ford facility in Detroit and announced a $174 billion investment via the American Jobs Plan to win the EV market. And so there's a really big push to really make the U.S. competitive in this market. And the question is, well, what can we do in Wisconsin to have a role in that? And so trying to define some of that as well. Next slide. And I just wanted to give you a few samples of the recommendations that are currently in the Clean Energy Plan that we're looking at and refining. These are things that we're building out and some ideas. What's going to be in the final Clean Energy Plan, I'm not 100% sure, but these are the things that when we talk to folks that are coming up that are being prioritized, that we should really be looking at, that decarbonization in the transportation sector via zero emission vehicles. That's a really big key. Like, as we start to transition, we're going to see, and also we're deploying these vehicles, but also updating our grid with renewables. We have a win-win there where we're really doing deep decarbonization across the vehicle itself, as well as how we power those vehicles. And then clean fuels and existing technologies, like our path towards electrification, and looking at the opportunities that we have on that path to reduce our current emissions now as we move towards electrification, implementing sustainable land use planning and transportation demand management, looking at vehicle miles traveled and reducing emissions that way, and then providing and promoting incentives for active transportation. So getting people out of cars, or potentially electrifying our transit system, and just trying to figure out how do we get more people into vehicles. Is it shared mobility? And then we have the opportunity to electrify there. Next slide. That's just a snapshot of what's going on. I'm happy to answer any questions, but here's my contact information. Certainly feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have one-on-one conversations with folks about what's going on and get you involved in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for sharing those updates with us. Attendees, please continue to type your questions into the chat box, and we will get to as many as we can during the panel discussion. And I would now like to turn things over to Lorrie Lisek, who will introduce our panel for today.
Thanks, Kelly. And we are so fortunate to have had Maria and Jeremy as part of this webinar today, but we have a great set of panelists coming up too. So presenters, if you could unmute yourself and turn on your cameras, that would be great. I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. Jeff Springer, he is the Manager of Innovation and Efficient Electrification for Dairyland Power Cooperative and a Wisconsin Clean Cities board member. Matthew Blackler, who is founder and CEO of Zeph Energy, and Ned Noel, who is the Senior Planner at the City of Eau Claire. We'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and let him just share a little bit about Dairyland and what they are doing in the electric space.
Thanks very much, Lorrie. Just a little bit about Dairyland first. Dairyland's a generation and transmission cooperative. we're made up of 24 distribution cooperatives located in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois. Next slide, please. Charge is an organization that was formed by our distribution cooperatives and was joined by 6 other cooperatives in Wisconsin that are not served by Dairyland. So it's an organization designed to promote EV charging infrastructure, and I'm talking a little bit more about it here. Next slide. So what is Charge? Well, it's driven by distribution cooperatives just on the idea that, look, instead of doing everything ourselves, what if we work together on solving these common challenges? So as I mentioned, these distribution cooperatives got together and formed the Charge organization. And initially it's made up of 31 cooperatives, 30 distribution cooperatives, and then Dairyland Power. Next slide, please. The vision, though, is to grow a national presence for electric cooperatives in the charging space. So this map shows you the land area that's served by electric cooperatives. So we do serve a large part of the United States, and we think if we get together and work together on charging infrastructure build out, we can do a lot more together than we could just individually chasing after the same goal. Next slide. So some of the challenges have already been mentioned as we talk about range anxiety, and we know that 80% of the charging is going to happen at home, but people really look for that charging infrastructure near them, and when they don't see it, they assume it doesn't exist anywhere. So we all kind of live locally, and until we start to see charging infrastructure pop up around us, we kind of say, well, it's not really here yet. And then there's the denial issue where change is hard. You know, people love their internal combustion engines. In fact, that Ford Mustang Mach-E even has an engine noise that you can turn on so that if you miss your engine, you can turn on the noise and listen to the engine noise. It's something where we're rolling some of those out already. This one happens to be in Reedstown, Wisconsin. It's owned by a group of Dairyland cooperatives that got together and put that charger in. And there will be more of these to come. Right now, when Jeremy showed that map, northwestern Wisconsin is kind of a charging desert. We're working to solve that yet this year. So look for more to come on that. Next slide, please. So people have mentioned too, training and education are just key. We still have a lot of folks who've never been in an electric car and driven an electric car. And as Jeremy mentioned, until you drive an electric car, you don't know how exciting it is and how much more fun it can be than driving an internal combustion engine car. So we're working with auto dealers as well. We know that auto dealers know cars, but electric cooperatives know charging. And we're working to use chargers that work well for us in our programs. So we're encouraging the dealers to work with us when members buy a car to get a charger that works well for them and can take advantage of special rates and time of day and so forth. Next slide. So we did do a partnership with Zeph Energy, and Zeph Energy is on the call, and one of the panelists here. They have the wide spectrum of chargers available, all the way from the level 2 that's in the home to level 2 commercial units that you see there, to the level 3 commercial units like the one that's installed there at Reedstown. Next slide, please. So as people have mentioned, education is still the key. So we're providing a lot of that as part of our charge organization. So educational assistance and staff training, to display materials, to brochures targeted to various audiences. So maybe the car dealer needs a special brochure that explains to them, you know, what's the ins and outs of charging when they sell a car. What should they be telling the buyer of the car? And then all the way from the social media graphics, which are key today because so many people live on social media, and targeted campaign strategies. Next slide. And I think that's it for me, and we'll open up the panel to questions now.
Okay, so if our panelists can all turn on their cameras and their microphones so we can get ready. And I love what you said, Jeff, about how it's going to take all of us working together. You know, that is what Clean Cities has been trying to do. for the last 10 years that I've been involved with the organization. It's just working together and really being collaborative, providing training and education. And in fact, this webinar is being presented through our Drive Electric USA grant program. So that is a collaboration of 17 Clean Cities organizations across the country. And so we're very excited to have our presenters and speakers here with us today. Matthew, can you turn your camera on?
I'm afraid if I turn on my camera, I'll have choppy audio. So
okay, that's all right then. Well, that's fine, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so we have some questions. We want to get started. We have some questions from our audience, and we just want to go ahead and first of all let Matthew, would you like to do just a brief introduction of yourself?
Yes, of course. Matthew Blackler, CEO of Zeph Energy. We've been around since 2014, and we're responsible for about 80 or 90% of the DC fast chargers here in the Upper Midwest. We're really happy to be partners with Dairyland and a bunch of other cooperatives and municipals across the Upper Midwest. We also, I think it is true to say, we're the only manufacturer of electric vehicle charging in Wisconsin. So we actually manufacture EV chargers in western Wisconsin, just outside of. So yeah, we take Made in America really seriously, and wherever we can, we try and manufacture our equipment as close to home base, which is Minneapolis, as is possible. Yeah, we think that's really important. Basically bringing transportation electrification lines of business here to the Upper Midwest. It doesn't just have to be the East and West Coast. Let's do it here. So yeah.
Absolutely. And Ned, could you do a brief introduction as well?
Yeah, hi everybody. Pleasure to be with you today. I'm the senior planner at the City of Eau Claire, and just here to present more of a on the ground, a local community perspective about how to integrate all of this into a community. So pleasure to be with you today.
Great. So while we have you, we know that the City of Eau Claire has a goal of 10% of all registered vehicles on the roads by 2030 to switch to EVs. And although most of the charging will be done in the homes or at fleet sites, 160 public and workplace charging sites are still needed. What I would love for you to talk about is a little bit about what was the transition like with Eau Claire, what you're looking at doing, and any hesitations or anything that you want to share with our audience today.
Yeah, good question. First of all, how did we arrive at that number? Basically, what that equates to is one public station per 50 EVs. Our other goal is 8,000 EVs on the local streets by 2030, which is basically, as Jeremy mentioned, that 10% projection by 2030. So we're in line with that goal, but to support it outside of the homes, we also need public stations, whether it's fast chargers or level 2s, different locations, whether it's publicly owned or also privately owned. So really the hesitation was, I think, more in terms of how do we take all of this information like we're all struggling with and create a plan and approach to integrate it into a community, also a fleet. We have over 200 vehicles in our fleet. So how do we transition with this in a good way that represents responsible use of taxpayer dollars? And so we've really tried to do that in phases, looking at our replacement plans, looking at the technology, and striking when it makes the most sense, working with partners like the electric utilities as well. And there's still some difficulties with some of the technology, especially with our cold weather climates. So we're still, I think planning has been really key in terms of wrestling with the universe of all these issues around EVs to plot ahead, working forward with our community and our partners.
Okay. And Jeff presented a little bit about the program that Dairyland has implemented. And Matthew, why did you feel, for Zeph, why was this an important program for you to be involved with? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So you know, one of the major shortfalls, I think, here in the Midwest is exposure and education. You know, there are countries out there like Norway that have over 80% of all new vehicles sold have a plug. That's huge, and that's today. That's with today's technology, today's charging, today's vehicles. It proves that at the right price, people will make the move. And very quickly, a lot of vehicles are getting down into the price range where a lot of people can make that move. And they're very happy when they make that move as well. But people have to know the technology exists. People have to know there's local partners available that you can work with to make sure that charging is easy. You know, who has, you know, their electrical contractor? Nobody does. You phone an electrical contractor one every 10 or 20 years, and it's the first person you can find on the internet, or you know, the person your neighbor uses. You know, so we think that working with municipals, electric cooperatives, and investor-owned utilities are really important to make sure that we take the pain out of the onboarding, or taking the perceived pain out of this change that you might be thinking of going through, but you don't understand anything about electricity. You think it's going to be expensive. You really don't know anything about it. So partnering with folks like Dairyland, you know, one of the key things there is that they have a vested interest in making sure that transportation electrification happens. Well, not only that it happens, but it's beneficial electrification. So making sure that when people are charging, it's beneficial to the grid. And if it's beneficial to the grid, it's normally beneficial to emissions. In doing so, it means that often utilities can bring a bit of money. So whether it be a commercial charger installation, perhaps it's a residential installation, but making people aware of that. So I realize this is a long answer to the question, but we really think the utilities are going to be key to helping this whole process along, and partnering with utilities to help them deliver programs down to the people that they serve and the communities they serve is just going to be key to this whole thing working. You know, education is key. Once people understand, then fear can go away. And then once we can get, you know, folks like Clean Cities, and also cities like Eau Claire, providing ride and drives and providing, you know, visibility that electric vehicle charging exists, you know, it works its way into the psyche of people, where people accept electric vehicle charging to be normal and you know, something that they can do themselves. So yeah, I think it's really cool that we have you know, 3 of you on the call today who are providing such an essential service, making sure that people feel comfortable making that jump. So
thank you. Jeff, can you kind of speak to the concerns about the grid? You know, we hear a lot about that. We have too many EVs. It'll put too much strain on our grid. Is there, can you provide a little bit of information on that?
Sure. One of the reasons that we did partner with Matthew, and I love that he likes us for the money, but one of the reasons that we did partner with Matthew is because he has solutions that allow us to take these chargers off peak. If we think about 80% of the charging happening at home, that's the one that's key. We won't be able to control fast chargers at a fast charger location. When you show up there, you want to charge. You don't want to wait to charge. But when you get home at night, you might be more than willing to wait until 10 o'clock to start charging your car, especially if that's done automatically for you. So when you arrive at your garage at 5 p.m. at night, you can just plug in your car to charge, and it starts charging at 10 p.m. at night when the grid is at a low level. And by morning, it's fully charged. And we've filled that big valley that we have in our load shape, where we just don't have a lot of load during those nighttime hours, and we can use EV chargers to fill it. So we actually see the electric vehicles as a good thing for the grid.
Wonderful. And then I'm just going to ask some questions, and whoever feels that they can answer the question, that would be great. Can somebody provide a little bit of an overview about the economics? Like, who pays for the public EV infrastructure? How is that going to be funded? I know that's Ned, Jeff.
Yeah, I can share an example. We're working with Zeph on a fast charger as part of that I-94 corridor that was mentioned earlier. And this would be a kind of a destination charger downtown, but it's a 180 kilowatt fast charger, 2 ports. And so the funding, stream in terms of the city bearing the cost of that was difficult, for a fast charger to actually own this thing. So Zeph was able to have a federal grant, working with Clean Cities as well. Our utility, Xcel Energy, is bullish about this. They paid for about $22,000 of make-ready infrastructure, the transformer, all the infrastructure to basically get the power to the site. And then the city brought our additional funding. And this one's kind of exciting too, because it's got a solar canopy on top, and will utilize the Xcel Energy Clean Energy subscription, so that it can be actually 100% renewable electricity. When someone plugs in there, they can actually take credit for that. So that's very exciting. So the net metering on that solar array actually covers the price of that additional premium for that subscription rate. So all that math works out so that we basically get a payback on the charger within 5 years. We will charge for this, and the rates are comparable to, say, Electrify America.
Okay. And Jeff, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I'll add in that the economics are really challenging on fast chargers. Having grant funds available is a huge help, and we've done some of those in the past working with Clean Cities to get those grants. We're going to be doing some in northern Wisconsin where it's Dairyland Power and the distribution cooperatives that are funding it. The co-ops are doing the make ready and Dairyland's funding it. But the payback on those fast chargers is probably never. The economics just aren't there if you had to buy the whole thing yourself. So why would we do it? Well, we see them as a billboard to show that fast charging infrastructure is there, and to advertise that we're the ones to turn to when you need charging infrastructure in your home. Because again, if we can get the chargers in the home that can be controlled and be off of our peaks, that's really important to us. If we get chargers in the home that are on our peaks, those can be losers and will put more stress on the grid. So it's partly just an investment in that education piece by putting the fast charger out there.
Okay. Do you, and this is kind of a personal question, but do you feel, and this would be for all the panelists, is Wisconsin really ready to make the transition to electric vehicles?
It's spotty. It's here and there, right? I did a webinar the other night for one of our cooperatives, and there was an older gentleman there. He was probably in his 70s, and I remember thinking, yeah, he's not going to be driving an electric car in his lifetime. And as we had the conversation, it became apparent that he has a Rivian truck on order. So they surprise you sometimes, the folks who are into EVs. And again, once you get in one and drive one, it's pretty quickly a conversion process. I think Joe Biden's comment yesterday when he drove the F-150 truck was, "Man, this sucker's fast." So they're bringing cars that are exciting and fun, and that's what it takes, I think.
And I think certainly the push, the push of the likes of Dairyland and the steps that Eau Claire are taking, around the fast charging, around these commitments to provide, a electric vehicle charging for every 50 vehicles on the road. Those are exactly the kind of things that we need to see. I think at the end of this year, the Bible according to EV charging is really plugshare.com. So on plugshare.com, we think the map is going to look wildly different by the end of the year. There's a big commitment being made, for example, by Dairyland and their member cooperatives, but also other cooperatives in their orbit, which means that there's going to be a lot of fast charging out in areas that you would never really expect. And so, I expect there's going to be a great kind of network of fast charging across the state of Wisconsin. You know, a large part, you know, organized by Dairyland and also other Charge EV members. I think a key part of making this succeed is proving that you have fast, accessible, convenient electric vehicle charging in rural areas. People often focus on urban areas, and they're really important. However, never discount the network effect. The network effect is really important. It's really cool that you can charge really fast and conveniently once you get to your destination, you know, in the cities, you know, like Eau Claire. But it's also absolutely fundamentally important that you understand when you buy your electric vehicle that you have this network of electric vehicle fast chargers in all the areas where you would drive with your electric vehicle. You know, people don't just go to cities. People like to, you know, undertake recreation in rural areas. You might live in a rural area. There might be circumstances where, you know, when you buy your Mackie or your F-150 or something like that, you want to make sure that, you know, if your charge goes south at home, you can just pop into town and use, in inverted commas, the gas station. That's really important. I've personally used it myself. We've got a fast charger at the gas station about 3 blocks from my house. We've probably used it 4 times this year. And I have a Tesla Model Y with lots of range, but you know, sometimes we might forget to plug the car in. Perhaps a breaker trips. You know, you have to have that kind of you know, gas station-like experience, which is a lot faster to make everybody feel like, you know, oh yeah, I can buy one of these things. One of these things exists in my community. That is essential. So, so I think it's going to look wildly different by the end of the year. It's going to be urban and rural, and I think there's going to be a great story about owning electric vehicles in Wisconsin over the coming years. So the nice thing is things change fast, and things are happening. So, yeah.
And I would tend to agree with that as well. We actually have a new grant that we're going to be starting on with Clean Cities to address issues in rural communities. And we're working with the Transportation Energy Partners out of Washington, D.C. and about 6 or 7 other Clean Cities organizations across the country to look at addressing issues in rural communities. So we're really excited that will be being started later this year. Ned, can you talk about it maybe a little bit from a municipal side of things, and what you know, what is some feedback that you're getting maybe from some of your employees or from government officials, you know, regarding the implementation of electric vehicles on a municipal level?
Yeah, well, thankfully, you know, our elected officials are fully on board. They support the additional funding towards these transportation solutions. The city has a carbon neutrality goal in line with the Paris Agreement. So we know that for our plans that we have to deeply decarbonize the transportation sector. And that means electrification because that grid's going to be cleaner. So our emissions are 34% of transportation across the city limits. And in order to achieve that change, you know, not only for the municipal operation, but also for our residents and businesses, we're going to have to go electric. So it's the way forward. It's in our plans, and strategically in our 5-year fleet replacement plan, we've looked at all of our vehicles, which ones are ready for attrition, which ones we're going to be able to make the switch to either plug-in hybrids or electrics. When our buses will go actually to EVs as well. And so we have a plan of attack for the next 5 years laid out in our plans. So we're ready to go. We spent, you know, 2 years of really deep planning on all of this, and so I think we're in a good shape now to start spending more towards charging infrastructure and vehicles, and then also that will help the public to see. And just around the community, I mean, I see usually Teslas more every day, and so it's exciting to see them more on the streets. And even Dairyland Power, our local distributor, Eau Claire Energy Cooperative, is working with builders to build new homes that actually already have level 2 chargers installed, ready to go for those homeowners. And so that's exciting to see already that the building stock is starting to integrate this from day one in the new construction. So I think we're all seeing just the growth of the industry, and it's really exciting that this year it's moving forward after the pandemic. So
that's wonderful. Yes, we have been for a few years talking about with builders and in new building to being EV ready, and just trying to really educate builders about that, and getting that, at least having the wiring in so that you don't have to tear up that concrete or tear up some walls to be able to do that. So so that's very exciting. We do have one question, not really a question, but several comments from some of our attendees that are applauding Dairyland on their work. It says the Dairyland commitment to chargers is terrific. It means we'll have charging on scenic state roads as well as interstate. So just wanted to let you know, Jeff, that people are really happy with the program that you are putting in. One of the questions that we get a lot, and I'm not sure who would like to respond to this, but in terms of the battery recycling and battery waste, as well as battery production and mining the materials needed to create them, would one of you like to address that issue about the batteries?
I'll start for the group, and maybe Matthew has more comments as well. There's a company called Lisek that's a Canadian company. It's building in Rochester, New York, in the old Eastman Kodak facility, what will be the largest lithium-ion battery recycling facility in the U.S. They're also building a facility in Arizona. So they're setting up to recover 95% of the materials that are in the lithium-ion batteries in an emissions-free process. So it's a clean recycling as well. Another player who can't be discounted is J.B. Straubel, who has started a company. J.B. Straubel was one of the principals in Tesla. He's actually a grad of University of Wisconsin, and he's in California starting a battery recycling, and he's the genius behind Tesla, so I wouldn't discount their capability to be pretty competitive in this battery recycling business. So it's already coming. We don't have a large quantity of batteries yet to recycle, but the infrastructure is already getting built to do it. Europe is ahead of us because they have more electric vehicles there, and they're doing battery recycling there already.
Yes. Cheers, Jeff. Yeah. So often people get concerned about this, and it's new technology, so it's understanding. So if we compare apples to apples. So for example, if we were to look at well to wheels total life cycle analysis, that's what we have to do. So we have to say, right, where did lithium come from? How much energy did it use to get it out the ground? But also, what happens with gas vehicles? Again, well to wheels. How much energy does it take to even get the energy to get the oil out the ground? How much energy does it take to actually refine that gasoline? So I'll give you a quick example. It takes 8 kilowatt hours of energy at a refinery to refine 1 gallon of gasoline. So 8 kilowatt hours. Now 8 kilowatt hours will get you 32 miles. So just the electricity used to refine the oil, if you just throw that into an electric car will drive 32 miles, even before you've burnt the gasoline, even before you burnt it. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting comparison. But that kind of leads me to the comment where there's been various, for example, MIT studies which show that overall energy consumption is 50% lower, well to wheels comparison. So and then overall greenhouse gas emissions are lowered by 60%. So it is significant. There's always an impact in every human activity that we undertake, but make sure whenever you're making a comparison, think about well to wheels. Let's do apples to apples. Yeah, so they make a big difference.
Absolutely. Okay. So how can individuals and organizations help build support for increased EV infrastructure in Wisconsin?
I've got
buy electric vehicles and charge at our chargers, right? That's what we need is adoption.
Yeah, you know, adoption is huge. You know, basically, you know, providing the example that you're espousing. You know, for a long time, you know, electric utilities have been talking about electric vehicles, how good they are, and this, that, and the other. Not a hint of an electric vehicle in their, you know, in their parking lots out the front. You know, not a hint of it being in the garage out the back. So, but the nice thing is that's changing really quickly. You know, boards are requiring, you know, they're asking utilities, you know, what are you doing about this? How are you putting your first foot forward? So for any organization, put electric vehicle charging in, but also get electric vehicles on your fleet and try and encourage the most amount of people to drive that vehicle during their working day. They'll end up really liking it. And don't buy the cheapest vehicle out there. Buy a vehicle that fits the use case. Make sure you have a good amount of range. There's some great examples, and I won't name names, but you know, this is in southern Minnesota, where one utility bought you know, a Nissan Leaf, the cheapest one they could buy. Another one bought a Tesla Model 3. There was a lot of negative feedback, and there was a story about somebody almost running out of electricity on the Nissan Leaf because they were trying to use it in a use case that didn't fit the vehicle. Whereas the cooperative that had the Tesla Model 3, everybody loved it. All of the kids at the local schools, when they turned up, they knew exactly what the vehicle was. They did ride and drives. People were arguing about who was going to take out the car to go and do meter reading. You know, that's the kind of experience you need to drive. You know, make sure the vehicle that you get in your fleet actually fits. The other thing I would mention is, as an organization or as a community, if you can be friendly to developers who approach you where they say, look, we have some funding, we have some dollars, it might be from utilities, it might be from DOE, it might be from the state, you know, there's lots of different places that money can come from. One of the things that is tough is finding locations. So as communities, if you can offer up friendly locations that would be good for electric vehicle chargers, you can drastically reduce the cost of rolling out electric vehicle infrastructure in your community. So yeah, that is really, really helpful. I know because our organization does a lot of project developments. Ned and the team over at Eau Claire have been great to work with. That's the kind of stuff that we need to work in partnership with communities and utilities and organizations, you know, to make these projects happen at a lower cost that they could otherwise do themselves. Yeah.
Do any of you have any suggestions for how we can get our dealerships and OEMs involved in this and bringing more electric vehicles to the Midwest?
I think that's starting to change as the manufacturers are saying we're headed towards an all-electric future. The dealers are starting to come around, but definitely if you're interested in electric cars and there's not one available at your local dealer, going there and asking them why they're not selling the electric vehicles and telling them that you may go elsewhere to buy an electric vehicle that they could be selling you, that'll go a long ways to getting them excited about doing it. I bought a Mustang Mach-E from a little bitty small town Ford dealer. So it is coming around where it's not just the big cities that have electric vehicles available now.
Okay, we have just a couple minutes left, and I wanted to just, if you have any last comments that you would like to make, let's feel free to share any final thoughts.
I'd happily go. I think that the time at which you know that things are really happening is when GM turns around and says they will not be manufacturing internal combustion engines from the year, now I want to get this right, I'll probably get it wrong. I think it's 2030. Is it 2030, Jeff? 2035. Okay. Now, sadly, 2035 is not actually that far away. It sounds wild, but you know, we all know that time passes. 2035 is not that far away. So when you have organizations like GM saying, we're just not going to make petrol and diesel engines anymore, that's serious. That gives the rest of us a lot of cover, you know, so to speak, when we go back to our organization to say, look, here's the proof that this is happening. We want to help accelerate it. You know, let's take some action here. So it's a really exciting time to be doing this. There's lots of really strong signals out there in the markets. You know, if you ever need any support, you know, there's lots of organizations you can reach out to. Reach out to Clean Cities, reach out to your local utility, reach out to your county, reach out to the state. There's usually help available. So many people don't drive electric vehicles now. And so, you know, asking, you know, there's no such thing as a bad question. So go out there, find the help. It's available. You know, there's lots of people out there to help, you know, make that transition or get projects going.
Okay.
Just chime in and say thank you to everyone on the group here for making EV infrastructure happen. I mean, Clean Cities is key. Matthew, a vendor like him, is key. Cities like Eau Claire are important. And then all of the people listening here that are obviously interested in electric vehicles, they too are going to play a key role. So it's happening. We just need to keep the momentum rolling. No pun intended.
Absolutely. Okay.
And thank you, attendees, for all of your wonderful questions. I know we had several that did not get answered. So if your question did not get answered, please feel free to reach out to our speakers directly. Their contact information has been up. And again, we will have a recording of this presentation following today's webinar. Thank you once again to our presenters for sharing your experience with us today. We couldn't do this without you. And thank you to our event partners, Dairyland Power Cooperative and Renew Wisconsin. Thank you once again for attending and joining us for today's webinar, Charging Ahead with EVs, a Drive Electric Wisconsin webinar. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the webinar today and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.